Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, execs are reshaping the B2B and SaaS world through AI, data, and automation. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we jump into today's episode, we at Deploy AI are always happy to talk to anybody about where to start with AI, talk about your use cases and where you can make the most impact. If you just want to talk strategy is probably the single most overlooked thing with AI. There's a link to book 30 minutes with us in all the show notes, and we're happy to just have no pitch. We're just happy to talk and figure out how to help steer you in the right direction. But let's jump into today's episode. I'm joined by Harry Fozzard from Lambent Marketing. Harry, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we always jump in and talk about your background first. So talk to us about kind of your career journey leading up to going overseas and doing the whole outsourcing game.
Sure. So, people do. I enlisted the Army shortly out of high school, and then, got out, went to University of Florida, had an opportunity to get, involved in media arts. So did a little stint at Carnegie Mellon after that. And then, jumped into really the advertising space in Miami way back in the day. Did that for a while, wound up starting my own gig. That took me to Houston for a few years. Kind of went there. Got caught up in the tech bubble until it burst. At that point, pivoted to e-learning. That e-learning company got acquired by a company back in Miami, and that company was doing a lot of outsourcing around the world. So they wanted to build a platform for online training. Kind of working, Caribbean, India, the Philippines.
Yeah.
And then that sort of wound up kind of being all consuming. That company wound up becoming a facilities-based outsourcing provider. By a series of misadventures, wound up being their CMO. They wound up getting acquired. And then I kind of spun out and started doing my own thing on the outsourcing space as a consultant. And then, we expanded to start delivering services ourselves. So that kind of brought me up to about now. We sold that off, got it up to about 600 seats, sold it off, decided to do something a little bit more boutique. And that's kind of where you find me today.
Fantastic. So tell us about your two companies, right? You have a US based and a Philippine based, and kind of who you guys serve and some of the things that you do.
Sure. So we do, as you mentioned, we have the US entity, and that's really, kind of a marketing front end, although we've got a couple of folks in the US that we work with to help deliver services and, do a client management. And then we've got a team of about 70 people in the Philippines. So it's very standard sort of front office, back office kind of arrangement. We support people around the world. So we have the majority of our clients are in the US, although we've got several in Australia, a handful in Singapore, and also a handful in the UK, and then a couple in India. And the stuff that we do for them is mostly ranges from support. For several of our clients, we have several touch points where we do multiple things for them. Generally speaking, that involves either highly customized processes or digital marketing, the range of digital marketing from content work all the way to outreach.
Yeah, lead generation. Got it. So tell me some of the things that you've seen shift and change in the marketing landscape over the last couple of years.
Well, the big one, of course, is AI, and that the velocity and scale that allows you to deliver, being a relatively small player. The other thing is just the way in which, the way that you connect with people. Social media has really, dramatically changed the messaging, the approach to, trot out that kind of overused term authenticity does tend to prioritize that in a lot of ways. So people are looking for a message that is less that kind of standard corporate, we're large and we can do a lot of things for you, and more personal engagement, I think more personality driven, even if it's not, creator specific. I do think that the way in which you communicate and translate your ideas and your selling points into, I won't call it personalization, but a message that comes, from from someone that is distinctly, human, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. And so how do you see AI impacting, because and you're seeing it front and center, right? It's changing the way in which businesses operate. And it's in our audience being the mid-market, and especially in B2B and SaaS, the adoption rate is quick in some areas and really, really behind in others. And the strategy is definitely disjointed. What are you seeing on the ground because I would think the marketing is probably where the quickest adoption has happened.
I guess. I mean, the it doesn't. I mean, for us, a lot of that's internal, right? It's like what you can do.
Right.
That ability to ideate at speed, right? So you can say, look, if you can frame out a generally good creative brief or a concept for a campaign, you can sort of turn loose, Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, what have you, on that, and really develop, just a stack of ideas. And if you've got I guess that editorial gene to be able to rip through that and sort of make some decisions quickly and effectively, sort of coming, that background in advertising and, marketing, that gives you kind of get that as part of a byproduct of that kind of work. So you can kind of look at, say, this is good, this is bad, and begin to, very quickly, execute on that ideation.
And does it allow you, I would imagine it allows you to test a lot faster as long as you have the infrastructure, right? For like if it's email deliverability and all that, just all that being equal, like you said, it gives you a lot more ideas and a lot more things to test, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you do, like, one of the things that you have to do is develop the infrastructure for that. So some level, depending on what you're doing, like depending on what kind of cold outreach you're doing,
Right.
Like, so we don't really do bulk campaigns, right? So we're sending,
Right.
Dozens or, up to 100 emails per account per day. So what you have to think about is, like, how do I build more accounts to be able to deliver more
Email. Right.
and to test along those lines. So yeah, so you can do more extensive A/B testing. We probably don't do as much A/B testing as we should, but we are able to more rapidly drill down what seems to work and what doesn't. And again, as long as you're staying with the kind of the original mandate, which is what's the outcome you're after.
Right. Build pipeline, right? Bring in more sales conversations. Sure. Right. Absolutely. And, along those lines, we were talking earlier that I did, you did a post recently about some really, really strong prompts that allow you to break up and rethink about cold email, right? And outreach, right? But what was your hypothesis is that outreach was being done wrong, right? In today's day and age. What was your kind of thinking around that? And kind of, if you give the audience an idea about what you wrote.
Sure. So I mean, a lot of this comes out of that, and I'm pretty sure that, as a founder, anyone or, entrepreneur, business owner, or, manager in an organization is going to see just an enormous amount of AI cold slop. And it's pretty formulaic and it's pretty obvious. And it ranges, in terms of efficacy, but in general, you can flag it pretty quickly. And that, they've scraped your data from, one of the bigger platforms that provides that data. You've got some sort of personalization, which is, probably linked to some update on your LinkedIn profile or some, something, maybe an update or just something about what you do. And then it'll just quickly shotgun into, here's what I'm pitching. And often it will be in like a ridiculous, if I could set up, 10 meetings for you in 7 days, or, we recently helped digital agencies close, X million dollars worth of business in 2 months or something. So it's normally that kind of recipe.
Right.
And so I mean, I guess it had a minute, but it obviously, the value of that, is dropping. And my own personal theory is that it's a bit of a scam, right? So they're signing people up, everyone's looking for customers, as they do.
Yep.
They overpromise. Maybe they deliver, maybe they don't. Somehow think they don't.
Yep.
And so that structure is somewhat enshrined in some of the tools like Apollo,
Mm-hmm.
where they have big data sets and they can do that. You can come up with a workflow pretty easily that'll do that. So I think there's just this, land grab of entrepreneurs out there trying this out. But at the end of the day, that doesn't work. So the question is then, how does AI help you do outreach? And it's a little bit about what we talked about before. It's also about multi-channel. So that's another thing, being kind of a back office provider. We can put people on the phone, right? So we can do LinkedIn and email and phone, and then also do some, intersperse that in with some, personal activity from, our clients. So, get that human element in there. So that's basically what it is. My comparison is that current playbook is akin to sort of all those Nigerian scams that became so famous, a while back, like about 20 years ago. And I think it's going to die out pretty quick. But the fact remains is that people still need, to sign up customers, and they want to do it at scale. And the toolkit that AI gives you allows you to, as we discussed before, to just do more testing.
Yeah.
Be more effective along all those channels.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I think one of the things that is coming out of AI, and you and I were talking about earlier, are workflows, right? And when you map out kind of the sequences in your whatever your process is, right? That's when we start to marry that up to an SOP, right? And then from that SOP, we can start to figure out where AI fits in. Right. And you were telling me earlier, it's very analogous to when you started outsourcing. So if you kind of want to talk to the audience about that, because a lot of them are understanding that conceptually, but they're lost about how to actually do it.
Well, I mean, the first thing that you want to bring to the table when you're working on that is just patience and give it its due. So just to sort of back up and sort of rehash that whole idea of, sort of outsourcing, how that gives you the toolkit that you need to get started. When you're developing process flows in the Philippines or anywhere that you're outsourcing, where you've got, kind of a cultural disconnect, or you have people who are, it's just like my favorite example is like training virtual assistant to handle, everyday tasks. Well, in the Philippines and, probably many outsourcing destinations, the idea of, having to get dry cleaning isn't going to be common. Right. I mean, dry cleaning is available, but it's not like you have, 1 hour dry cleaning on every, street corner like you do in a big city in the US. So that would be an example where, that cultural disconnect isn't culture per se. You just don't have awareness. You just don't have context. So a lot of the times when you're building process flows for your team, and in particular, when you're working with people who are doing things that are kind of new, for example. So one of our clients is they're basically Airbnb for RVs, and they're in Australia, and they blew up after COVID, right? The public and everything else. They started from a founder contest and did that. What we discussed, and we started when they were very small, so we kind of grew with them and expanded our team to wrap around it. But what was happening was processes were getting reinvented in near real time and stay connected with what they're doing and what we're trying to communicate to our guys. It was pretty complicated, or not complicated, but it just took a lot of extra effort. But what we had to do was kind of figure out how to take those processes that were very ad hoc and then develop workflows around them. And that takes a minute. So you're kind of working with understanding what you're doing, not making assumptions about what the other guy or AI platform will understand, right? So constantly, one of the things you're constantly doing is feeding them in context, so that kind of that understanding of not making assumptions about any step in a process or any external knowledge or awareness that you may bring to the problem is part of that whole outsourcing game at our scale, right? So it's different. Right. I mean, we're little guys. When you're getting up to big processes supporting like an Xbox or something, that's very different.
Yeah.
So that whole background allowed us to understand kind of intuitively, once we began to, really embrace and feel like the AI thing was going to happen about a year and a half ago, maybe a little more. We were able to bring that kind of methodology to the table in terms of building these workflows.
Got it. Makes sense. And I do think it's very, very analogous, right, to building these AI workflows now. And honestly, Harry, I just feel like agentic's going to grow. We're just scratching the surface. Like, most people aren't even dipping their toe yet. Vast majority of the people that I talk to don't even know how to build their own GPTs, and
Right.
which is okay. It's like, and it's not meant to, to shame anyone. I feel like the cohesive strategy is what's missing. And I think, the one group that I hear over and over that has, jumped in head first, right, is the marketing department across almost everywhere. Because, again, pick your favorite content tool, whether it's an LLM or it's Jarvis or it's Grammarly, whatever. That's where everything started. And so I feel like they're, the marketing teams are a little bit on the forefront. But I feel like the real unlock power is in some of the stuff you were just talking about. It's in workflows that are part of our day-to-day, and really turning SOPs into agents that can do some heavy lifting, right? Definitely still need humans in the loop, but I feel like the use cases and the ROI impacts are not being assessed up front. And it's going to be interesting to see how the board level and the C-suite start to change their mantra about it. Because right now it's, hey, I just need AI somewhere in our product suite. Well, that's not the right thing to do. It's just kind of where we're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, well, yeah, and as you pointed out, like the marketing teams, you know, started with the content, right? And that was good, like you said, Jarvis,
Yeah.
Grammarly. I mean, those guys were kind of doing it, in a
Before,
sort of all kind of way. Although, Grammarly remains this, great tool that just works in the background. I mean, I think that's a really good paradigm for this stuff, is where it's going to go, and where, honestly, when Google sort of gets its starts to pull everything together on the back end side, having all this knowledge of a Google user, that's where you're going to begin to see it, as a kind of a transparent layer.
I keep waiting. I keep saying, why isn't Gemini just dominating the world? Because they could, right? It's the biggest mystery to me of all time.
Yeah,
it's
crazy. I think it might be the fact that they can't seem to get their naming together. Like, they've got 18 different products, but I think the other aspect of it is because it's always been, marketing's always been a, numbers game, right? And it's also had this, funny dimension to it, but it's always, like I can remember doing bulk mailing for Carnival Cruise Lines, those sorts of things. Or it was always about getting postcards or catalogs and mailboxes, right? And if you can get more in there, the better it worked. And of course, quality mattered, but a big variable is volume, and that that isn't going to change. But I think the other funny aspect of it is you're talking about that testing, and I just keep thinking back about that that old cliche term is I know half my marketing's working, I just don't know which half.
Right.
So the question, and that was always the promise of email or all this data-driven marketing, is now I can figure out which half. Well, now we can make that the number go up, and we can understand it a little bit better with those tools. I mean, one of the things that we use that our clients really like is, we used to put these reports out there and give them to them. Now we use AI to analyze the reports. We vet the analysis, but those analyses that we put out there are great for the client, and it's really good for us too.
Yeah. Totally agreed. So, Harry, as you look out in the next 18 months, kind of crystal ball it, what do you see, and where do you see the big opportunities and the big
Well, you alluded to it with the agentics. I guess, like so many people, we started with prompts and said, oh, that's kind of nice. We can create a set of instructions, and by and large, you'll get a pretty similar result over time. And then we started connecting, the prompts, and then of course using prompts to write prompts. So it gets very meta very fast. So we were on that trajectory. And, that the agentic stuff as we get it. And I think that's going to turn into its own discipline, honestly, as I see it, because it is, we talked about it, it's time consuming, requires patience.
It is. Yep. And, there's all kinds of places where it can break, and absolutely. And you just need folks to figure that out. And, but again, as we always say here, don't let us mislead you here. That doesn't mean AI is IT. Right? Because I always say, let's not be, because I hear a lot of founders, just give it to the CIO or the CTO. I'm like, that's not how this works. When you get into some of the tech pieces, right, you want to get into N8Ns, you want to get into some of the the tech stuff of building MCPs. Yes, absolutely. You need some a little bit of tech help, but it's not. It should not be a barrier or an obstacle.
Yeah.
Harry, again, I totally agree with you about where some of that stuff is going, and it's going to be very interesting for you guys at Lambent. Where will you continue to serve the mid-market? Do you think will you start to serve different industries that you are? Are you going to focus? Where is your best opportunities going forward?
Well, we've been a little bit opportunistic about the markets we serve. We tend to look at B2B, and we tend to look in professional services. It seems to be what we do the most of. I said we have the most clients, not really the most revenue, but but with that said, so that'll be where we focus. So at this point for us, we're using these tools to improve the service that we deliver, cut some headcount where we can, and sort of trade up. We talked about that a little bit.
Yep.
Going from people who are doing, and this is part of the paradigm of, offshore outsourcing is that you take, repetitive tasks and, use labor arbitrage to execute that less, more cheaply. But, as it happens, it winds up getting better for a lot of reasons that have to do with, just sort of the general outsourcing game. But so we're kind of in a position of like, we're trying to do what we do better. I believe that at some point, what we're going to be doing is fundamentally different, in terms of supporting those clients. And I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I do believe that the toolkit, the ability, the velocity, just the changes in the media landscape that we're seeing, play out in the political sphere, are all alluding to some kind of bigger changes that are afoot in terms of both how we approach marketing, but also what marketing looks like.
Yeah.
And so I sort of suspect that we'll find ourselves in that arena as we continue to kind of push on the frontier of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Love it. Well, Harry, thank you so much for spending some time with us, sharing your insights. Again, we'll have all the links to your LinkedIn and your website below in the show notes, but tell everybody how to get in touch with you guys.
Sure. So probably the best place to get in touch with us is on our Lambent website, which is lambent.co. And then you can reach out at me on LinkedIn under my name, Harry Fozzard. And those are two good places to do that.
Yep. And again, links will be below in the show notes, guys. And make sure you reach out to Harry and his team, and definitely someone you guys should be talking to. So Harry, thank you again for sharing with us today. And listen, we can't get enough of this information out to our founders and CEOs to think about how to rethink their strategy, some of the things they need to be considering, and some of the providers out there, right? Like Lambent, where they can really help you move faster in certain areas. So definitely thank you for reaching out and for coming on the podcast. So thanks, Harry.
Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof, and we'll see you on tomorrow's episode. But remember, if you're looking to future proof your business, keep watching, because all we do is bring on people to share their insights so you can get knowledge faster. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.